A lot of thoughts to be shared today. We'll have thoughts from Mark Lucente and Max Young, as they'll provide kind of their insights to share what they learned. And whenever, this is meant to be an open discussion today, so whenever you agree with something, disagree with something, I know that Max and Mark love a good argument, discussion, or friendly discussion. So yeah, feel free to chime in whenever. So as I said, we'll kind of do introduction now to the beginning, and then we'll jump into the recap session with Max and Mark. And again, questions, comments, concerns, anything, feel free to throw that at during or at the end, whenever you feel most comfortable to throw in your thoughts. In case you missed it, we did recently do a webinar with Satya, one of the field CTOs for Camunda. So if you want to check that out, feel free to scan that QR code. It'll take you to a page to get that link for the webinar. It was really interesting. Max, anything you wanted to share on that?
No, I just thought it was actually one of my favorite conferences in like several years. I thought it was just really open and deep and very sort of idea driven, vision driven. I had a great time there.
Cool. So we'll go ahead and jump into the recap here. So we'll start out. I know, Mark, you had some good thoughts from the conference. So I'll go ahead and throw it over to you to talk about value stream mapping.
Sure. And the way we have this set up for the call today is I don't normally present on these calls. So thanks for having me, Mark Lucente. I'm involved with a lot of our projects across a broad set of topics, but when we got to the conference, we looked at all the different sessions and we wanted to, as a team, go to a lot of different sessions. So one of the ones that I gravitated towards was this one, which is value stream mapping. And if you've been doing process systems for a while, you probably every couple of years or every few years, you revisit this idea of not just how we spend our day drawing processes and writing Java and doing all these things that are around the processes, but how often do we actually revisit the input costs and the output value of a process? So this is very kind of, it's not theoretical. It's more or less, if you've ever heard of things like Lean or Six Sigma or things like this is the way that processes are defined. So a general term for that is value stream mapping. And these two guys that you see on the screen here, Guido Fischermans and Tobias Kahns, did this presentation. You can go out to the CamundaCon website and you can Google and you can see all of the different sessions, and the recording for this one you can see. And what you're going to see then is the two slides on the screen as well as a bunch of others. And they build the slides as they're talking through how to do value stream mapping. And I know for my purposes, because I don't do it every day, but throughout my career, I've done value stream mapping. And so once in a while, you need a refresher. At least I need a refresher to remember how this is done. And from Camunda's perspective, I'm guessing this is important because Camunda becomes a stronger value to its customers when its customers actually do things like assign the dollar value to a KPI. A lot of people just don't do that. But like I said, we spend our day making processes and rules and Java and all this stuff. But then we might just kind of forget to remind ourselves and our business stakeholders why we chose a particular process for automation or orchestration. So this is if you watch this, Tobias is interesting because from the perspective of a non-Camunda, someone outside Camunda, he does a lot of things also with Optimize in C8, which is how you do dashboards and all kinds of analysis of what's happening in the processes and whether they're running efficiently and how they have their the different statistical values of them. Like even the cost, like you could have a variable in a cost. I saw this yesterday with a customer, and we can create these dashboards and Optimize that can start to analyze the dollar value of a process. So if you do find yourself out there, watch this one. It's a pretty interesting session. And if you're like me and you don't get to spend every day doing mathematical prioritization or dollar prioritization of processes, that's okay. But it's a good thing to revisit once in a while. And especially that slide at the top, if you've not had a chance to go through kind of Lean or Six Sigma training before, this is a real shortcut to that, that I think is a good enough start for a lot of us to do our jobs in process mapping. So I think that's about all I would say about that one. You can go out and search for value stream and you'll get right to that recording and you can pop in there and look at it.
Hey, Zach, we should probably put a QR code on the presentation before we send it out directly to this part of the presentation on this page.
Yeah, I can definitely add that.
All right. I think this is another one of mine. Okay, so this is another session that I went to. In my younger years, I was an SAP project consultant. I worked on 10 SAP projects, about 4 of them, the long-term, multi-year, full life cycle SAP projects, and a few others that were, shorter term for specific skills. And what Camunda did is they hired this guy, Volker. You see his name there. He's what's called an SAP advocate, which is it's kind of a hard thing to become. You don't just, there is no program for it. You just, somebody calls you one day and says, you're an SAP advocate because you're that important to the SAP community. So it's a pretty hard thing to be. And he is one of them. And he's teamed up with Camunda and he's helped them to define and build this connector. And if you're an SAP customer, you know that in a lot of SAP shops, you have spanning processes that go beyond SAP, but because SAP has so much gravitational pull in the IT shop, they try to suck everything into IT. So there's this back and forth that happens in SAP shops where you have some specialized capabilities like what Camunda can give you in end-to-end process, where you do a couple things in Salesforce, a couple things in SAP, a couple things in your shop floor control area, a variety of different things, and you need process that span all that. So what I'm always looking for when I go to these sessions is, did the cloud software vendor, in this case Camunda, did they build it in such a way that it makes sense to an SAP person? Would SAP people accept this into their IT shop? And as soon as I started to see the screens, it made sense to me. To an SAP person, it should be pretty obvious how this thing works and why it works the way it does. And it should be additive to the, pretty much any SAP shop that has to do spanning or E2E process. And while I'm at it, this term E2E is something that end-to-end process came up a lot at CamundaCon, as well as this other term boat that I think Max is going to be mentioning. And so those are overarching things that it's contextually interesting to know what Camunda was talking about relative to those things, because each of these sessions often had some kind of thematic tie back into either boat or E2E. So this one here would be a lot of an end-to-end process kind of topic.
Yeah, if I could chime in on this for just a minute, Mark. One of the things I really liked about this is that, in a lot of ways, SAP is critical to large enterprises, but there are sort of sharp edges, corners. There are places where it's not completely smooth, right? And that can be extremely painful for the enterprise. And what I like about this is Camunda sort of coming in and saying, we can help you smooth those out. We can make it baby safe, right? We can make the gap in functionality that keeps it from being 90% to being 100%. We can cover that 10% of functionality. And we know what those use cases are, and we built the connectors for that. I just really like the foresight of that. I like the way that Camunda is not just throwing, here's an API, you can do absolutely anything with it. It's throwing the most useful things out there so that you can solve the most important and pressing problems, but it's not trying to boil the ocean. Okay, so my takeaways was I thought of kind of following along with the last thing I said. By the way, can everybody hear me?
Yep.
All right. I'm using a new microphone, so I'm checking it out as we go along. So I guess my thing is that there was a lot of right now you see everyone talking about AI, and they're sort of vomiting forth AI into every part of a product, potentially in places where it doesn't belong. I feel like Camunda is explicitly not doing that. They're putting AI and they're putting integrations in places where I think it makes really important tactical sense to further a strategy. And I think that strategy really is end-to-end orchestration and automation. So let me talk about how I think they're doing that. One, with the micro RPA. There are many times when you need to do a little bit of RPA. For example, you've got Julia, and what she does a lot is she gets an Excel sheet, she looks up the cell 17A, and she puts it into a green screen. She sees if the system is approved or not, and she sends that forward to someone else, right? That's the kind of stuff that's actually low-hanging fruit for an RPA tool, robotic process automation tool. But if you were trying to incorporate that from an enterprise bureaucratic architecture perspective, it's painful. You got to get licenses, you got to get approval, you got to put in the tools, you got to bring people in that know, like Prisma or Blue Prism or UiPath or whatever. It becomes a whole thing, right? And I think what Camunda was trying to do by introducing the robot framework with micro RPA was to say, hey, if you've got low-hanging fruit, if you've got fairly simple RPA, you can just use this out-of-the-box free open source feature to solve that really simple problem. So on the one hand, you don't have to go to all the technical sort of delay of building a true integration, which is the right answer, but not always the practical answer. On the other hand, you don't have to buy new licenses of a true RPA tool in order to get started, which can take a couple of months. Here's this tactical thing that solves a strategic problem. And the strategic problem is, how do we integrate with this ancient green screen system? And it does in such a way that you're not incurring a tremendous amount of tech debt, because maybe in the background, you've got another project rolling up and they're going to take the 3 months or the 6 months or however long it takes to build a true RPA, a true integration. And then when you're ready for that, you just, you stick out the RPA and you replace it with the integration. So from sort of a long-term enterprise architecture view, which is the view that I tend to take, it is allowing you to accelerate quickly, to get something effective done in a matter of weeks, and you're not paying a tremendous amount of interest on the technical debt of it because it's designed to be replaced. So I really like that. They are doing some really smart, interesting things with AI integration. So for example, you can go to the Camunda modeler and you can say things like, hey, give me an HL7 compliant FHIR patient intake form for the hospital. And it's actually smart enough to know what that actually means and create a form that's spec compliant with the HL7 spec and build that for you. So you can pull that in and put it in front of your customer and say, is this right? Is this what we're looking for? Right? So it's the use of intelligent automation intelligently, so that you can get past these sort of barriers of, oh, well, I got to look up the spec, I got to look at the data model, is it JSON, XML, something else, and I got to build a form. And you can do all of that. We've all done all that, but now you can do it in minutes as opposed to days. So I'd like the use of AI integration. They've got Copilot that can give you advice on how to write your field expressions and stuff. I think that's really cool. One of the things that they're introducing sort of back into the mix from the good ideas of C7 are the idea of C8 run. So if you want to set up Camunda 8, there are sort of two options. One option right now is that you can just buy the SaaS model, which frankly I see a lot of customers doing. The other is that you can set up self-managed. But if you set up self-managed and you stray outside the lines in any way, instead of using, Elasticsearch, you want to use OpenSearch or something, that can make your installation non-trivial. So what C8 Run does is that it actually tries to basically give you a black box that says this is Camunda, right? This is Camunda 8. You can just install it on your local environment. You can size it for your dev environment, your QA, even your prod environment. Now, those other ones are not ready yet. They're on the roadmap. The dev environment one is ready, so you can install it locally if you wanted to. But it's basically a black box. Poof, here's Camunda. Now stop worrying about the problem of infrastructure and installation and configuration and start thinking about the problem of the business case that you're trying to solve. So from that perspective, I think it's a really good idea. I think it is a tactical implementation of technology that solves um, an important strategic problem, which is, again, how do I get up and running? How do I move past sort of the predicate problems that I have to solve in order to start solving my business process problem? So I really like that. Next thing that I want to talk about, actually, let me just pause for a minute. Anyone have any questions or comments or anything on that? Talis, UA, anyone? Talis.
I mean, I do have, but it's more like maybe a discussion about the whole RPA scene and the way they're implementing it, and it ties to like the discussions we had during the Champion Summit, which the potential is there. We can like leverage robot framework to do a whole bunch of things, but now like the way that they are doing and what they actually show was one out of like n possible implementations, which is only for web applications, only for like only using the browser library. So we are only automating stuff in the web environment. So when we talk about green screen, you're opening like your desktop environment and going like in specific. That's still not there, but the potential is there, and they are actively looking at exploring it, exploiting it. So like the potential is immense. Like you can bring like custom Python libraries to do custom stuff like that. And our robot framework is just another layer of orchestrating RPA stuff on top of a very good process orchestrator. So that all like chains together.
Yeah.
But so the potential is there. The green screen is not there yet, but I feel like it's just it's a step that they're going to take it. It's such a low hanging fruit. They will take it. There's no way they won't.
And I think, honestly, I think that's the important thing. I think what they're trying to do is go for the low hanging fruit. They're not trying to get into the RPA business. They know there are things that, Blue Prism and UiPath and Automation Anywhere that do that Camunda does not do. And they don't want to do those things. What they want to do is like the super simple stuff, right? Just like, you see tools like UiPath, they're not really like a process orchestration tool, right? They're much more tactical in my opinion, from a sort of a workflow orchestration tool, right? The things that a single person would do, not the larger picture. I don't think that if you look at like the Venn diagram of RPA and what Camunda is doing, I think there's a very small overlap. And I think it's exactly the kind of things that you and I were just talking about. The small overlap of, hey, open up this Excel and pull this information, put it on the green screen. And I think some of that stuff is still to be defined, and I think it's coming. But I think what's cool about it is that, the guys who are thinking about this, Christian and Daniel and Conrad and so on, they are thinking about it in a limited scope. And as you know, and we all know from just being in the software business, limited scope is a key ingredient for success. So I really like that. It's not just that I like the effect, I like the thinking behind the effect. So I think that's wonderful. Anyone else have any thoughts or comments? I love to argue, by the way. So if you disagree with me, bring it on.
Yes, I do not totally agree with all your words, because I don't think it's just in a version that you can start as quick as it is. It is really a scope, yes. And as I asked the last days, where is the tooling for recording the script? Recording your Excel sheet. is a business citizen developer. They want to click on Excel, record it, and put it in robot framework. There must be a kind of workflow that's very easy with tooling, and that's still missing. I will be interested how they will engage in that, because the existing plugins that exist are outdated and not maintained. So they should go in charge to make it more easy for simple use cases. You are right, absolutely you're right, and I see a lot of potential, as Thales as well said. I'm very happy to see robot framework here, but really at the moment it's only POC. It's I think it's a state of what Markus Stahl showed some years ago, but the idea is really good, I think, and I hope they make it comfortable package that you can use these small. And if you imagine, what do you have when starting a process? You often have a document or an Excel file to go in and then start multi-instance of these rows in the Excel file, for example. So it will be a good combination of parking the document in an archive with IDP, and then process all the errors with RPA, for example, and make instances or sub-processes or whatever. So it's a very good thing. People really, and we expect, especially in our company, have for over 10 years now. We always have document at the start of the process and have to handle it and not to bring it through the whole process. So it's an absolutely known problem, and that they address it directly is very good.
Wait, that is such a fair and insightful analysis. So you're absolutely right. It is very much at the beginning of the infancy, right? And I think part of what they're looking for is exactly for the kind of guidance and the feedback that you provided. Hey, concentrate on this, concentrate on that. This plugin is outdated. We got to make this easier. But I'm excited that they are even thinking about this, right? I'm excited that it's on the roadmap. I'm excited that they're taking this sort of rounding step, and that they are clearly listening, right, and asking for feedback.
Absolutely. The other thing that I want to mention as well is C8 Run. Mm-hmm. It's only one part of that was always I want to try. I want to start up a modular process, start an instance, implement some worker, and with low hurdles, as less hurdles as possible. So no SDK installed, mostly Python or whatever runs from command line, even Node.js or whatever, and not a fully blown SDK, whatever. So it's always a target. Start very fast, and C8 Run is really that. You even do not need Docker, so you can only simply have Java and start it up, and like before in C7, very fast. Absolutely. So what's the next one? Modeling. Okay, we have a modeler, can deploy it there, it's already there, okay, like C7. So starting an instance. How do I start an instance with less as possible? For modeler, it's easy, but it's not fair to run an instance from modeler. So from a web page. What do you do? Before, you had to have gRPC client. Ooh, that's hard. Or a webhook incoming event.
Oh, yeah.
Now we have, again, a REST call. And I think we can even come to a simple HTML file with form fields, with a little bit JavaScript, and then start the instance again like before. So it's really a lot of easy techniques to get all the things running. And that's I think that they still have the idea, start fast with not need much. That's really good.
It reminds me a little bit of, this is going to sound completely unrelated, but I promise I can tie it back in. It reminds me a little bit of like health and fitness. Like, even if you don't know what you're doing, you want to go to the gym, right? You'll do some ridiculous exercises. You'll look silly, but if you keep going and you're consistent, you'll learn, you'll adapt, you'll feel your strength, you'll feel your weakness, and you'll be able to build on it. And I think that's kind of what they're doing here. I think they've kind of thrown down the gauntlet and say, we know we need some degree of low-level RPA. Yeah, we know we need something with C8 Run. And I think this next level of feedback, the sort of insightful commentary that you're making, is exactly what they need to hear. And I think they're prepared. I think they're inviting. This is one of the things I really
Yeah.
love about the Camunda
Yeah.
culture.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly. I have another picture in my mind, not the gym, but the Industrial Revolution.
Oh, right.
The Industrial Revolution is a big step from mechanical to electricity.
Yeah.
So, and it was very hard to go to this next step, to this next horizon. And what happens? You do not change gRPC, central deployment, no execution at the same time to get people get their investment saved.
Yeah.
They would say, "Oh no, that's too much."
Right. Right.
So what they're doing actually, every pain point is removed one after another. They listen to their customer. The only thing that is back, and this will still stay, is the central processing unit, the central workflow. It's not a self-contained system as before with an embedded engine. It is centralized, and this is hard enough because you now must have or install a team that is responsible for that. I think that's enough to manage it, and
Absolutely.
then you can see in the following years. gRPC is good for streaming scenarios, and it's still there, and you can use it there, and the effort is okay, and all these things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's really good to make safe investment for existing customers, and makes the step small, and then that's my industrial revolution, like from mechanical to electric. The same thing, like you say, adapting, listening, and the listening and the direct. For me, I don't know, it's because of Champion, but I know a lot of Camunda people already over years, and now I'm very happy to. He's going to do the new process test framework. Right. We have regressions test. Let's come together. What's in the works? How can we influence it? Give feedback, and they really listen, and that's the thing that makes fun.
So Maria, Abney, Isaac, Satya, Dimitri, Mikhailo, I would invite any of you guys to speak up. Please don't be shy. The one thing I do want to say is, I don't know if this is like a German thing or if it's just like a part of Camunda's culture. But one of the things I noticed again and again and again is they have like a really sort of strong sense of humility. Like when you talk to them, they are open to ideas, no matter, how senior they are or how much thought they've given to this. They always listen. At least when I talk to them, my experience has been that they listen, they consider an idea. I mean, sometimes they'll push back and say, no, this is not a good idea. Blah, 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 blah. But I always feel like culturally, the folks at Camunda are interested in the problems that we see out in the field. And I feel like, if you do good things, good results happen. I feel like this is one of the good things that Camunda does. So I'm a huge fan and advocate of that. Did anyone else want to weigh in on this before I went to intelligent document processing? Okay. When I hear silence, that means talk faster.
Yeah, I want to weigh in on something that I think overarches a little bit, like BOAT and E2E. I think that Camunda looks really, really strong. I will say that if you compare CamundaCon 23 to 24, there's a pretty big difference there in the level of maturity, and you feel like you're in the midst of a bigger vendor that really has it together and on the rails. So it's a really nice time, I think, to be in the Camunda implementation business, because it's a nice balance point between a cloud vendor, a process vendor that's small enough to listen, but big enough to have really legitimate, solid scale of execution. Yeah, but it does feel like, across our careers, we have these interactions with different vendors, and this is a good time to be in the Camunda interaction kind of business.
Yeah, absolutely. And that actually kind of brings me to the intelligent document processing. So in the RPA, what Camunda decided to do was kind of go small. Hey, we're going to give you not a homegrown, it's an open source, but we're going to give you a custom thing that we don't need like a large partner for, but it solves the strategic problem, which is how do you get past like a quick integration, right? There's another thing that I think they've kind of gone a different tactical direction with the intelligent document processing, but it's the same strategy. So with the intelligent document processing, what they're doing is they are actually making it super easy to call like AWS Bedrock and or other systems in order to be able to process your documents, right? So in the context of RPA, they went small. Hey, we're just going to build this thing and it's going to be, plugged in. And the IDP stuff, what they're doing is they're actually going to a big vendor and they're saying you can go to AWS, which is second to none in terms of being able to document processing. But the idea is the same. The idea is how do we help people get past the nuances of this technology and that technology and focus on the business problem that they're trying to articulate and solve and automate. So in that context, I think it's really compelling. The idea that you can just easily say, go process this document. And, frankly, the way that I would do it is once I got like a document processing, let's say it's for like income verification. And let's say that the documents can come in multiple forms. It can be a note from your boss, or it can be a copy of your tax return or a W-2 or a pay stub or whatever. I can imagine letting the customer upload all of that, letting an intelligent document processor that progressively grows not just more and more intelligent, but more and more sort of omnispan, able to do more and more types of documents, getting independently more rich. And what it returns to you is probably a canonical information set. So it comes back and it's like, hey, all these documents need to at least return first name, last name, social security number, income, date of last paycheck, and probably some finite number of things. Return it back to you in like a payload that's canonical. And you run that payload through like a DMN table to see if the person qualifies for saying having their document verified or not verified. The idea being that you can sort of draw a circle around this problem of of OCR, right? Intelligent document processing, and say, I'm going to let an external system that's an expert at this solve this problem. And I'm going to take the output of that and I'm going to incorporate it into my process, right? So this is component-based architecture. We all learned this back in the day. But it's kinetic. It's in effect. It's actually working. And it is designed to help us solve, I think, important problems. And one of the most important problems that I see when I work with large enterprises is you kind of have to keep them from getting out of their business. When I work with a bank and they have to do document processing, and then the engineers go off for 6 months and learn all about, how to make this system and that AI system do this, and they become fascinated with it, and they put all their opportunity cost and all their energy into solving that technical problem, rather than the problem they're supposed to be solving, which is how do I give better and cheaper loans to my customer in a way that grows my business, right? So I love the fact that what Camunda is trying to do here is kind of clearing a path and letting people focus on the problems that they need to focus on, rather than ancillary problems that can be a time suck and an energy suck for the kind of things that have to be solved first, but can be tedious and distracting. So that's sort of what I really like about it. And it actually goes to Uwe's point, about how a lot of these processes are inherently document driven, right? How many times have we done something where someone drops a document to SharePoint or to an S3 bucket or into a drive, and that kicks off the process? This is for that, right? And this is for that in a flexible, adaptive, evolvery, I'm not sure evolvery is a word, but I'm going to pretend that it is, in an evolvery sort of way. So I'm really kind of liking that. And I think all of this comes together into this sort of Gartner boat, combining RPA and BPA and low code and finding a way to let people focus again on the heart of the matter rather than ancillary branches that go here and there and everywhere. Any comments or any feedback, any disagreements on that? Like I said, I love a good argument. Next slide, please, Zach.
Yeah, so that was all that we had up on here. So if anyone has any final takeaways from CamundaCon, anything that you found interesting that you'd like to bring up. Like Max said, he loves a good argument. Also feel free to send us email at info@capppm after. If you have any additional questions, follow Camunda on LinkedIn if you haven't, which follow us on LinkedIn as well, or visit either of our websites too. But if anybody has any other thoughts they'd like to share, feel free. The floor is yours.
I'll say this, Talis, I want to pick a fight with you. We're talking about on LinkedIn, we were arguing about the rule of 9. And, I said that when I model processes, I like to keep it to about 9 widgets at a time. And I think you said, well, that's a terrible idea. Why would you ever do that? I think that's exactly what you said. What did you say exactly?
I just said that's kind of limiting, and like going for like sub processes or call activities to try to limit that when you have like some complex logic that you need to kind of hide to make the flow kind of more understandable, and you do that by sub processes to try to limit to 9 or 10 widgets in a single picture. Usually my users, they have a hard time following when you go down 2 layers. So for example, if you go down 1 layer inside a sub process, and then by chance that decision is also complicated enough that you also need to have to summarize a small bit of it as a sub process as well, and then people just, they should watch the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio. What is that? The one that he goes.
The one where he's going into dreams and all that.
Yeah. They should watch that one because it's about that. It's about going into layers, but not losing the perspective of the one before. But they lose it, and it's kind of confusing. But then if you're like that, your process has like 90 widgets because it's like 9 here and then 9 within each one. So it's 80, 90 like widgets. That's a very long process that probably could be broken into 2 different processes, or you're not using DMN properly and you have a lot of going back and forth.
Right.
Gateways. I don't know.
No, I actually agree with you. I was teasing you. I think you've got to strike a balance there. I think that it's, for me, typically, like I won't go more than 2 layers deep in a meeting with the customers. But I see your point. If I'm like going like 5 or 6 levels deep, and where was this, and this was up here, and it's zooming in and out, and you're right. That can be very distracting.
I have a point that I want to raise, and that's to Uwe, which is Uwe is the perfect person for this question because I've only been to 2 CamundaCons in Berlin and 2 CamundaCons in New York, and they are the same CamundaCon, but they are kind of very different. Like they are the same event, the same people mostly, but they are kind of different in a way that I cannot explain. So I wanted to like maybe pick Uwe's brain if that's just me because I'm new to the scene.
No. It's a refreshing spirit in the whole company, I feel. Because if you know them from over 10 years, when they are really a small company in Berlin, a startup, and I had to convince my insurance that we rely on that small company, you can imagine they look at big players like IBM that we have before in our house and say, oh, what does this little company can do? And there was this startup feeling, this, for example, they have, I think still have hack days under the developers every year, 1 or 2 times. They concentrate on ideas. For example, BPMN with sound connection. So an event is giving a beat, and they showed it on a CamundaCon on the stage, the results of these hack days, and you can imagine events and beat, and all the people say, oh, great, what fun. Is only one example they have in mind. It was the spirit of they doing fun things, and of course professional business as well. And so was the spirit you can change. They listen, as you always said. So and now and already 10 years ago they started to develop on their own engine with little hack things like a Cassandra cluster with Raspberry Pis or little things, how to come around the bottleneck of databases. Already 10 years ago on a hack day. I have a picture of that in one of my presentations. But I did not know that was the beginning of ZB. It took a lot of time to develop an own engine from ground up. So, and then I think they had a point where they said, okay, now we have to switch on the otherwise we could not and then there was the architectural idea. There was too many changes, and the existing partners do not follow. So and then have the backbone to listen, to rearrange. That was a really hard thing, and I think this is a period from the last CamundaCons that they were in the transition and a lot of new ideas, and all people said, "Oh, Elasticsearch, oh, it's a pain in the cloud," or whatever. So many different. If you do not start from on greenfield, if you start with C8 with cloud, you have not this legacy in behind. And now they listened and say, okay, we can change it in the manner that people like it. And that's now the spirit I also feel in New York, as I know from only Camunda over the years. And I think happy to feel that again. I can only say.
Yeah, you touched on a very... I haven't made the connection in that way because the Berlin and Amsterdam crowd, but mostly the Berlin crowd is like the folks that have been with Camunda for a while and know that like since like the Raspberry time and like all of that like time that like the tinkerers, the crazy folks had always been there. But I feel like now approaching the North American and the new paradigm that Camunda is on, they have a more refined and solid product. It's not only about tinkerers doing crazy stuff, it's like it's a solid product. So the approach is different. And CamundaCon New York is kind of a greenfield with some folks coming from CamundaCon Europe, from Berlin, but it's a greenfield, so it's a completely new approach. But in Berlin, we kind of expect that crazy, like doing crazy things with Camunda because it's always been there, and with New York, like it's pretty new, and the approach for the product is different. And people here, maybe here in North America, most of them they know Camunda now in this new paradigm of Camunda. Just like as a quick example, just yesterday I was at a conference in Toronto and I was having a conversation with a fellow called Bob Blaney. He's an RBC fellow, he's an ex-IBM fellow, and then I was discussing BPM and process automation, and I mentioned Camunda, and then he said, yeah, we use Camunda at RBC, it's a very reliable engine, we like their approach and everything, but he never mentioned Camunda as like, oh yeah, the Camunda that we know, like the long chain of like tinkerers and crazy things and all of these different applications. He knows Camunda as the very solid product that does that thing very well. Like he's not interested in maybe all of those other things. Like he's interested in what Camunda has to offer now, and that is doing pretty like very well. So like it's a different crowd that they are going after now because they have a different product now.
No. I think it's. You can say in Berlin or Europe, they are the long time customers. They know Camunda because of stability, high performance, easiness, all these attributes. They like Camunda because of that. And I think my impression is, in the United States, they're mostly customers that are 2-3 years new with Camunda. They heard of it, they jump on C8 directly. They do not have they say, oh, it's a German company, software from Germany. I don't know if it's the best reputation. I don't know exactly. I think Camunda has to fight in the business that it's a good tool. And I always think BPMN is the backbone. It will always be the backbone. That BPMN, clear BPMN is. I also hope that one topic still missing in the conference is how to model, like we just discussed a little bit, a cool and good BPMN. There are so many experience around that. There's no topic on that on the CamundaCon, but we had it in recent years, of course.
Well, I want to chime in on that. So, two cool things. First of all, the Camunda people actually have this thing now, this video podcast they do called BPM Battle, where they basically sit down and they have two people model a process, and then they argue about one thing was better than the other. And I know that sounds incredibly boring, but to people like me, it's like watching like two masters play chess. It is so much fun.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I'm a big fan of that. And then for a while there, I was doing something and I haven't revisited it, but basically I was taking like really ugly process diagrams and I was rearranging them to try to make them like cleaner. But I find that sort of exercise almost cathartic. Like it calms me down the way that some people like if they do a crossword puzzle or they do carpentry or something like that. I love the modeling part. Like to me, it's like a mathematical proof. Try to say all the key things in an efficient and as clean a way as possible. It feels intellectually cleansing. I love it. So I'm just excited that you mentioned it.
Yeah, absolutely. I always have in my mind, if I have not the topic of process automation. For example, if we have two departments in our company, one makes the rules, the other have to make the implementations, and they were not, we can say they are angry at each other. Who does what? I'm better than you, and what do you expect? And they made a big picture. Who is doing what? And I say, I don't understand. What would you do? I simply made a process. Who does what? Who approves which artifact? Revisit it again, and so makes only some bubbles, and then go to our big boss and say, okay, here's the agreement. You see, that's the process. That's a pain point, and that's a good thing. So, very good prepared. Only a BPMN model, nothing more. No automation. It's only documentation at that point. So you could put that out for the strangest things. Even if you have an architectural review about different layers of security, user pump. If you say, okay, we use this stack, but then we need logging. Okay, make a process of this. Make a bubble for each layer, and then the Camunda gives you the logging out of the box, and you can play with it around it. So so many things, and I only want to emphasize that actually we are on a technical CamundaCon phase because we have all these technical connectors and all these things very interesting, of course. But I think the backbone should be more present on the conferences as well. I would really like it to live modeling or something.
Absolutely. So, Uwe, I got to say, Maria and I were actually just talking about this on the Slack channel for Camunda Champions.
Cool.
And we should maybe have this, but I think it would be so much fun if, as Camunda Champions, we did like some sort of a podcast or some sort of a thing where we do this kind of stuff, right? Like there's a small but dedicated group of people who care about exactly the kind of things that we care about, and I think it'd be fun to do that. So that Maria's idea, she had like a very sort of thoughtful post on how we as champions can be more interactive and more supportive of all this. But it is, so I know this is off the New York CamundaCon topic thing, but it sounds like a lot of fun. Thank you so much for engaging as much as you did today. Anyway, guys, thank you very much. If you have other topics that you want to hear, we obviously pull in a lot of international smart people like Uwe, like Talis, like Maria, and all the other folks. So we'd love to hear things that you care about, right? Not just the things that I think you care about. So bring up topics. Let's have a good fight.